Manipulation is often misunderstood. Most people imagine it as something obvious: lies, pressure, dominance, or deception. But real manipulation is far more subtle. It does not rive loudly. It does not announce itself. It enters quietly, disguised as urgency, concern, responsibility, or expectation. It appears in moments when you feel pushed to decide quickly, when silence feels uncomfortable, when hesitation feels dangerous, when saying no feels socially costly. Manipulation works best when you are emotionally hurried. This is why calm people are so difficult to manipulate. Not because they are smarter, stronger, or superior, but because they do not allow emotion to dictate tempo. They do not let pressure decide timing. They do not let urgency replace clarity. Calm people change the pace of interaction, and by doing so, they change the power dynamic entirely. Most influence relies on speed. It relies on catching you before you are fully oriented, before you have processed what is being asked, before you have checked whether the request aligns with your values, priorities, or boundaries. When someone stays calm, that window closes. Calmness creates delay. Delay creates space, and space restores choice. This is not accidental. It is not a trick. It is a consequence of regulation. Most people react not because they want to, but because their internal state feels unstable. When emotions rise, the nervous system looks for relief. Speaking, agreeing, explaining, or acting becomes a way to reduce discomfort. The action is not chosen for its wisdom, but for its ability to end tension. Calm people relate to discomfort differently. They feel it, but they do not rush to escape it. They do not confuse emotional intensity with urgency. They do not mistake pressure for importance. They stay present. This presence is what disrupts manipulation. Manipulation requires emotional movement. Fear must push. Guilt must pull. Approval must lure. Without movement, the mechanism stalls. Calm people do not move easily. They pause. They breathe. They observe. This pause is often misunderstood as weakness. In reality, it is the moment where power returns to the individual. When someone attempts to manipulate a calm person, something unexpected happens. The usual triggers fail. The anticipated reaction does not arrive. The interaction does not progress as planned. Silence appears. And silence is deeply uncomfortable for those who rely on control. In silence, manipulators lose momentum. They begin to speak more. They justify. They explain. They repeat themselves. They escalate. Calm people listen. They do not interrupt to defend themselves. They do not rush to clarify misunderstandings. They do not feel threatened by temporary misinterpretation. This patience allows intent to surface. Pressure reveals itself when it is not immediately obeyed. Another reason calm people are difficult to manipulate is that they are not seeking validation in the moment. They are not trying to be liked, approved of, or understood immediately. Their sense of self is not dependent on the outcome of a single interaction. This independence removes leverage. Manipulation often disguises itself as connection, as friendliness, as concern, but underneath, it relies on need. The need to be accepted, the need to avoid conflict, the need to maintain harmony at all costs. Calm People do not sacrifice alignment for comfort. They are willing to tolerate brief discomfort to protect long-term clarity. This willingness changes everything. Calm people are also consistent. Their behavior does not shift dramatically under pressure. They do not become impulsive, defensive, or erratic when stakes increase. Consistency removes entry points. Manipulation thrives on volatility, on emotional highs and lows, on unpredictability. When behavior stabilizes, influence weakens. Calm people respond based on principle, not mood. This makes them reliable, but not rigid. They are flexible without being reactive. They adapt without losing orientation. This adaptability further limits manipulation. Calm people also separate tone from content. They do not confuse intensity with importance. A raised voice does not automatically command attention. Urgency does not automatically demand action. They listen for substance. This discernment prevents emotional hooks. Many people are manipulated because they respond to how something is said rather than what is being said. Calm people reverse this. They strip away delivery and examine meaning. This takes time, and time is exactly what manipulation cannot afford. Another key factor is attention. Manipulation requires access to attention. If someone can dominate where your attention goes, they can influence what you prioritize. Calm people guard attention carefully. They do not engage with every stimulus. They do not respond to every message. They do not treat every request as equally important. They choose. This selectivity reduces vulnerability. Calm people are not passive recipients of information. They are deliberate processors. Over time, others sense this boundary, not because it is announced, but because it is consistent. Pressure stops working. Urgency loses effect. Emotional appeals fall flat. People slow down around calm individuals. Not out of fear, but out of necessity. Another overlooked aspect is self-trust. Calm people trust their ability to respond later. They do not fear missing out on the right moment because they know that clarity improves with time. This confidence removes the panic that manipulation feeds on. Fear is the primary doorway manipulation enters through. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being wrong, fear of delay. When fear loses influence, control weakens. Calm people are not fearless. They simply do not let fear decide for them. They acknowledge fear without obeying it. This internal authority is difficult to override. Calmness also protects identity. Manipulation often works by subtly redefining who you are in the moment, labeling you, framing you, pushing you into a role. Calm people do not rush to accept imposed identities. They do not defend against labels. They let them pass. This refusal to engage prevents identity hijacking. Another reason calm people resist manipulation is that they are comfortable being misunderstood temporarily. They do not rush to correct perception. They understand that clarity unfolds over time. Manipulators need immediate engagement. They need quick agreement. They need fast resolution. Calmness disrupts this timeline. It stretches interaction, and stretched interaction exposes inconsistency. Calm people also maintain internal boundaries. They know where their responsibility ends. They do not take ownership of other people's emotions. They do not rush to fix discomfort that does not belong to them. This boundary limits emotional entanglement. Manipulation thrives on entanglement. Calmness disentangles. Over time, calm people develop a reputation not as dominant, but as grounded. People know that pressure will not move them easily. That urgency will be examined. That emotional tactics will not succeed. This reputation becomes protective. Not because calm people threaten consequences, but because effort stops being rewarded. Influence follows path of least resistance. Calmness increases resistance without aggression. This makes manipulation inefficient. Calmness is not detachment. It is presence without urgency. It allows engagement without surrendering control. This does not make calm people immune to influence. It makes them selective. They listen openly. They consider perspectives. They remain curious, but they decide independently. This independence is what manipulation cannot penetrate, because manipulation depends on dependence. When someone does not need immediate reassurance, approval, or relief from tension, influence weakens. Calmness also changes how conflict unfolds. Calm people do not escalate. They do not mirror aggression. They remain steady. This steadiness de-escalates situations without submission. Calmness removes fuel. Without fuel, conflict burns out. This further limits manipulation. Calm people are not trying to win interactions. They are trying to remain aligned. Alignment is invisible, but powerful. When someone is aligned internally, external influence has less effect. They do not trade clarity for speed. They do not sacrifice values for comfort. This integrity becomes structural. Structure resists force. Over time, calm people experience less regret. Most regret comes from actions taken under emotional pressure. Words spoken too quickly. Decisions made too early. Boundaries crossed impulsively. Calmness protects against these errors. It creates a buffer between stimulus and response. That buffer is where choice lives. Without it, life becomes reactive. With it, life becomes intentional. Calmness also reshapes how pressure feels in the body. Stress does not disappear, but it becomes manageable. Tension is noticed without panic. Sensation is experienced without interpretation. This embodied regulation increases endurance. Endurance outlasts intensity. Many people burn out not because pressure is too high, but because they never learn how to stay composed within it. Calmness teaches cooperation with difficulty rather than resistance. This cooperation builds resilience. Resilience reduces vulnerability, and reduced vulnerability limits manipulation. Over time, calmness becomes an internal compass, a way of orienting regardless of conditions. Calm people stop asking, "How do I feel right now?" and start asking, "What is aligned?" This shift is subtle but transformative. Confidence becomes stable rather than situational. It no longer depends on mood, outcome, or approval. Calm people trust themselves under pressure. This trust removes fear. When fear loses access, manipulation loses power. If this perspective resonates, notice where urgency usually pulls you. Notice where silence feels threatening. Notice where pressure speeds you up. Those moments are not weaknesses. Signals pointing toward where calmness needs to be practiced. Calmness is not something you perform. It is something you cultivate, and cultivated consistently. It becomes one of the strongest forms of self-protection available. Not loud, not forceful, but steady dot and steadiness, sustained over time, is extremely hard to manipulate.